We're rolling jujitsu.
We're rolling. I'm not going to sing. Yeah.
Hey.
I know. Stop, drop, and roll. We're rolling. Yeah. I'm not going to sing Limp Bizkit, but yeah, that's what that made me think of. Rolling, 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 rolling.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. You've got a bit of my sick voice there.
Well, just bestow us with it more often. Like,
I will.
I just started thinking of jiu-jitsu, of course. I'm like, bring it back, man.
Rolling.
Bring it back.
Bring it back soon. And wrestling. Come on, we're nearly there, surely.
Yeah, exactly. With that face. It's like, we're
Please.
there. Maybe. Yeah.
Please, let's be there soon.
What's cracking? How's the week been?
It's been good, thank you. Busy, the usual stuff. How's your week been?
Pretty good, pretty good. I've been reminiscing about The Last Samurai, hence Bushido Brown.
Okay.
It's clicked.
Tell me.
It's clicked.
Yes, all right.
It's good. Obviously, it's a sick film. Obviously, it's another Tom Cruise movie. That's a sick film.
Obviously.
And yeah, no, I was just thinking about it. There's that wicked scene where in like the orchard, I guess, just like cherry blossoms,
that's right,
trees and stuff, and then and then it's just like life in every breath, and I was like, yeah, life in every breath. I was like, I don't have tattoos. Probably will never get one, but if I was ever going to get one, I'd probably say life in every breath.
Where would it be?
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe on the exactly slapped on my head. It's just right there. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. Honestly, got no idea where it would be. I was like, yeah, if I have a tattoo, that would be here. Maybe put it on the peg. Don't want to put it on the arm. I think that's a bit too obvious.
Nah.
But yeah, I think it's a good message. You know, appreciation in the little moments, presence.
Absolutely.
As well. And yeah, I was like, yeah, life in every breath.
It's a long film. I seem to remember The Last Samurai. All right.
Yeah, but it paces well. It's just
beautiful.
Just goes by beautifully.
I'll have to add that to my list of what seems to be Tom Cruise films to watch at the moment. Have you seen this?
Watch more.
It's the Tom Cruise film. Tom Cruise film.
Yeah, it's like just assume that'll be the suggestion, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
What happens when we get to the end of them?
We just do them again. There is no end. What are you talking about?
Okay.
But you had some thoughts that got spawned and inspired by another Tom Cruise film, so don't you be knocking. But you watched Vanilla Sky.
Yeah, I did, and I really enjoyed the film. I know we spoke about it the other day, and there were moments that you were thinking were a little bit questionable. And I agree with those moments, but the film overall for me, I enjoyed it just as much as when I first watched it, whenever it came out in 2001.
2001. That movie's 12 years old. Yeah.
2001. I was like, oh, it's in 2012 it came out, didn't it?
Yeah.
No, 2001.
That's it. End of 2001.
I enjoyed it just as much. Wow. And I'd forgotten a lot of the story, actually, so it was quite nice to reminisce. And I don't know why it came to me when I was watching it, but randomly, the thought came to me about, okay, bad things happen, but it's your response to those things that is important. And when I say bad things, I don't mean things that are out of your control. I mean things maybe like getting into an unhealthy relationship, or getting into a bad job, or having an unhealthy relationship with money, or having a bad relationship with food, or that kind of thing, or just maybe not getting on with a certain sort of person. And rather than thinking, why do bad things always happen to me? Why am I so bad with money? Or just dismissing it like, I'm so bad with money. Oh, that's just the way I am. Or, oh, it's because my parents were la la la. It's like, that may be the case, but I also think it's important to take responsibility for the situation that you might find yourself in, and maybe look at your role within that situation. Right. So it's not,
100%.
oh, isn't that awful that, I've got into this terrible relationship and it, isn't that other person bad? It's like, well, there'll be a reason that that's happened. And I don't want to get into the psychology of it because I don't know enough, and I wouldn't want to claim that I know enough, but there is a belief system within that. There is a thought process within that. There is what's called a core belief system where, for whatever reason in your past, something has been shaped. And, say you're bad with money. I'm trying to think of my way around it, but, you might have seen your family struggle, or you might not be given the opportunities. But I think it's the way you approach, say, money, or the way you approach your how you deal with money, or whatever it is that is the key. And if you do have a unhealthy relationship with whatever it is, then maybe it is time to address it and look at why, and know that you can turn it around. It's like an injury, isn't it? It's the movements that we've done over time and the repetitive nature of what we do over time, over the years and years and years, that create that injury. So it's the same with our thought processes and the way we think day in, day out, year in, year out, is going to have an effect on our reality. I'm bad with money. I'm never going to get out of pain. I'm always picking the wrong person. Yeah, then that's probably right. But there are ways to get around it. It's almost like you have to change your approach to that. And it takes work. And I think it also takes realization as well. I think it's not enough to say, "Oh, I'm just bad with money." I think you have to. I think you have to be. You have to realize that there is an issue, and it's not just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know
Big
what I
time.
mean? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that was what we was, and it was just that whole idea of the things we do repeatedly will shape us. And I don't know why it came to me after Vanilla Sky. I guess because the main character, Tom Cruise's character, he got into an awful situation. He was in a car crash, but he created that essentially, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He created that entire situation by not handling something very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
And you could track that back to how he was and his upbringing and all that sort of stuff. So he played a role in his accident. And I guess that's where I was coming from with it. So it just made me think of lots of different things.
Yeah, big time. Fire is, you're
There's
right.
a lot to think about,
Yeah, there's a few different bits in there. But essentially, it's just it's like that kind of one of the things that makes me think about is victim mentality. So if you're just accepting the bad situation as if it's always going to be that way, and there's nothing you can do about it, it's like, well, no, that's just all right, fine. If you just want to live a mediocre, substandard life and just keep going that way, fine. But like you said, there's something that you can do about it, because there's always an element of something that is within your control. Doesn't matter how small it is, you can grasp onto that and then try it and work on it. And again, the other thing that you said was it takes effort, and it does. It always takes effort. It takes time. But at the end of the day, anything worth having is going to take effort. So I think the example of money is a good one as well, because there's a lot of negative connotation with money. But the thing is, money just is. It's not like money is not the root of all evil. It's like it can be if that's what you want it to be. But which is the common phrase that gets thrown around. And conversely, it's not the root if you wanted it to be. It could be the route to your heaven, So
Absolutely.
it's not evil, and it's not heavenly. It just is. It's just one of those things. Is like you make it what it is. So then, the relationships that you develop with it could be because of how your family approached money, and it's kind of ingrained to the extent where it's not consciously obvious to you, right? But you have to. But then you start to pay attention to your behaviors around that thing, and we're talking about money, and then you start to say, oh, wait, actually, every time I get my paycheck, it's already gone by the second week of the month. You know, like why is that a repetitive pattern when, and I keep complaining that I don't have enough saved up for a rainy day, and then you want to start looking into. So you've noticed one thing, like you said, you've realized, you made a realization, and off the back of that realization is like, okay, well, what can I do about it? Is paying attention to how often it happens. Is like, again, you nailed it as well. Repeated behaviors is just, it gets ingrained. In that injury example is a fantastic. I think that's a really good. What's the word? Oh damn, I've lost the word. Not metaphor. When you analogy. There we go. It's like, oh,
Oh,
that's my word.
he's asking
Yeah.
me. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Don't you ask me about that. Yeah, it's a really good analogy for it because yeah, injuries tend to happen most commonly. You know, they're called like idiopathic, or they're built up over time. And then you just one day, you know, if it's a back injury, you bend over, you go pick up a pillow, and then you just throw it back at it like, wait a second, that's never supposed to be like, I'm not fragile. So what is that? It's like, you know, bending a paperclip millions of times over the same spot until it finally snaps. And so yeah, you've baked in all those movements which are abhorrent for a long time, and then you're like, oh, I'm fragile because I can't pick up a pillow. It's like, no, everything leading up to that moment has brought that on. And then similarly with these behaviors, you ingrain that thought pattern over and over again without really noticing it. And then you might wonder why you're broke all the time. And so then you start to, well, the fact that you start to ask the question is an important thing. You start to pay attention to those behaviors, see what kind of trends you notice, and then you're like, okay, well, I can intercept that. You know, I can change that up because I've become aware of it. I can decide to do something about it, and something like money is like, yeah, there's a lot of it is within your control. It's like, okay, you might not be able to demand a pay rise, but then is that any good if you haven't addressed the behaviors that you have with it? You know, is so if you're like, all right, I need a 10%, I need a 20% pay rise or something, but you know, are you actually going to do something with that, or because can you trust yourself because you haven't changed the behaviors that are keeping you in the situation that you're in? So it could be a small thing. It could even be like, all right, instead of spending it all, put a tenner away, you know, every week or every month, and then you know that you can do that thing. Then because you know you can do that thing, you're like, okay, maybe I can make it a little bit more ambitious. You know, it's like start small and then building up from there. And then there's a lot of things that come from that. So instead of playing victim, you're like, okay, I've taken control of the smallest aspect of it that I can, and I've actually started to build on that. And now that I'm building on it, you develop a sense of agency. You know, you're like, oh, I've got control over my situation more than I thought I did. And it doesn't take a lot to realize that. Like we just pointed out, you can do something as tiny as, I mean, we're just using this as an example. It can be for anything, but it's like you're just putting a tenner away a week, and then that builds up and that builds up and builds up, and you're like, okay, right, I've shown that I can do this, and what else can I do? You know, what else? That agency you get, the confidence that you get from it, the your agency, confidence, autonomy as well is another one, and then just that sense of whatever comes your way, you can start to handle it. So you're building up your resilience while you're doing that.
Yeah, nice.
There's so many things that come from just taking the smallest action to get yourself out of a situation which you think is beyond your control, and also, like, you know, using the Vanilla Sky example as well, it's a situation he's got himself into. Now, if you address, okay, it's like fine, there's consequences and they've been had, but you can still come out of that better because those consequences can be a massive teacher for you. You learn off the back of that, and you're like, okay, well, I don't want that to happen again. What do I need to change to make sure that doesn't happen again? And then you can build from there.
Absolutely. And as you were talking about that, it kind of reminded me about how I gave up alcohol. It's a couple of years ago now. And before I gave up, and it's an interesting thing as well, is that when I tell people that I've given up alcohol, one of the first questions I get asked by people that don't know me is, was I an alcoholic? And it's like, no, I wasn't an alcoholic. I just noticed that was a poor behavior of mine. and I didn't like it. But it wasn't for a while. It wasn't until it started to build up, and I noticed that I didn't like my behaviour around it, and I didn't like how I felt the next day. So it's almost like sometimes has to get to a point, I think, with people as well, where they're sick of their own behaviour. And I was very much sick of mine. I was nowhere near on the scale of an alcoholic, but I was at a point where I was like, I don't like my drinking. So there was probably some sort of, maybe you would say, psychological addiction there. And so I think the first thing, as we've been talking about, is realization. It's getting to that point where you've noticed, and then it's getting to the point where you want to do something about it as well. And I never for 1 second thought that I would be able to give up. That was number one. And so I thought about it for a while. Yeah, I thought about it for a while, and I mulled it over in my head. And then I read a book. And this is one of the main reasons that I am into neuroscience, is because of this book. And the book was called This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. And miraculously, once I read the book, I gave up. And that was empowering. Amazing. Yeah, it was. And I never had the intention of giving up at all completely. It was never my intent, but I just I didn't put any pressure on myself. And I think that's one of the main things that really helped me, is that I didn't put any pressure on myself. It was almost like a life experiment for me. Can I do it? Let's see. And once I got a couple of weekends out of the way, and I realized how amazing I could feel and how awful I was feeling when I was drinking, that kind of spurs you forward. So it's much like what you were talking about with money. Like, you put a little bit away and you notice how you've got more opportunity to do things. And that was like me with alcohol. It's like, as soon as I gave up, it gave me the opportunity there was never a thought in my head of, oh, I can't go here because I'm going to feel bad. It was like, yeah, I can do whatever, whenever. And I'm always present. I'm always here. And if I feel tired, it's because of something else. It's not because my body's struggling to try and process alcohol. It's something else. So that in itself was empowering, and that propelled me forward. And it just got to a point over time where I felt so much better that I didn't want to drink it anymore. And even now, like, I'm still like, people ask me, do you think you would, or if you're on holiday or when you're out? And obviously I can't comment because we can't do any of those things. But in my head, I'm like, I don't think I'd want to. I've got to that point now. And so I think if anyone is listening and they are struggling with something and they've noticed that pattern, and they are realizing that there is an issue, I would say absolutely read the self-help books, whatever it is that you're struggling with. And if that's not doing it, there's nothing wrong with going to get a bit of therapy and looking at it like that. We would go to an osteopath, right, to get our injuries looked at. So it's the same with if you're struggling with some sort of thought cycle and thought process, there's nothing wrong with going to talk about that and understanding, unraveling why you might have got to that point. I was very lucky in that I was able to do it with a book. But if a book doesn't do it for you, then there might be another way. It might be maybe talking about it is a better route.
Yeah, absolutely. There is. There's a way out.
Always.
Exactly.
If you want to, though. If you want
exactly.
it, and if you want it badly enough, I think there is. If you are, and I think it is that if you want to change enough and you want to change your situation enough, I think there's always a way out. But I think you've got to notice first and then put in the steps. And it doesn't matter how long it takes you. Just keep making those steps towards that end point.
Exactly. Because in terms of, it doesn't matter how long it takes you, is like, I mean, that's just life, right? Life is it's going to take as long as it takes.
Exactly.
And you're always, I mean, it's one of those things where if you're not like expanding your horizons during life, in whatever way that is, again, it can be a small way. It's like not like tackling the biggest world problems or anything. It's like whatever it is to you. If you're not expanding your horizons, then you're actually moving backwards. It's you just don't feel good. So doing those little things, which are essentially end up being big things for yourself because
Yes.
of, it's literally like it's compounding interest effect on your own life. It's always worth it. It's always worth doing the small
Oh,
things.
I can't even tell you. Yeah, it is worth it.
Yeah.
And I think it is also like, try not to think about that big thing that you need to do, because I think from experience that will push you into overwhelm. It's like day by day, small steps. If you regress, don't worry. As long as you feel like you're heading in the right direction and you still want to change that situation that might not be serving you anymore, then you're going to do it. It's like I was saying, my little boy came into me yesterday and he was like, I've only read 2 pages of my book. I should have read 100 pages by now. And I was like, why do you think that? And he's like, well, I just, and I was like, well, did you enjoy what you read? Yes. Did you understand what you read? Yes. Well, then you're in exactly the right place. You're exactly where you need to be. And I think that's important for our clients and for anyone listening, not just, with a book or whatever. It's like, did you get something out of that today? Whatever it might be. Did you feel better about it? Did you enjoy it? Yes. Well, then you're exactly where you need to be. Doesn't matter about that end goal.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you hit the nail on the head there as well. It's like you set your end goal, you set that big, high, hard goal to achieve. But as soon as you know what that looks like and you know what it feels like to get there, put it aside, because that doesn't matter anymore unless you do the small micro actions that are required every single day to get to that place. So the only goal then that you should have is the one that requires you to take action on every single day. And that's it. Just take action, do that small thing. With with your son, it's just, you read a couple pages, great. You're a couple pages better off than before. Like, don't put the pressure on yourself with should. It's
I know, it was that should thing again.
Yeah, it's useless. I'd like kind of had this conversation with a client as well. It's like, right, if you're stalling on your goal, is it because do you actually want this thing, or you feel like you should have this thing? And so I was like, look, I'm not interested in getting you to some place where you think that you should have it, because that's going to be met with a ton of resistance. I'm only interested in getting you where you want to be, like genuinely. So, in a lot of cases, like what you want and what you should have are going to be the same thing, but at the same time, is like, you don't want to go for the thing because you feel like you should have it. You want to go for the thing because you actually want it. And it can be confusing as well, because it could be like, in our world, it's like people want to lose weight as well. So it could be like, I want to lose weight because I'll be healthier. It's like, okay, but if that's not important enough to you to do that, then don't kid yourself, because you're not gonna achieve it. And so if you keep stalling on that, is it because, are you stalling? Sorry, if you keep stalling on it, then you have to ask yourself the question: is it because I actually want this thing, or is it because I feel like I should have this thing?
Yeah.
So don't, at the very least, make them be the same thing. So because there's no point in going for it, even if it feels like it's going to improve your health, but it's not worth it's like, just don't bother. It's basically it. It's like,
I totally agree with that.
you could come up with so many reasons why it's worth it, but if it's not speaking to you, if it doesn't inspire you, then you know what? Even if your life is on the line and you really don't want to do it, then fine. But
You're not going to feel great when you get there either, are you? So
well,
it's
the
not going
thing
to feel
is, it's
great.
like, you're just not going to get there,
Yeah.
because it just becomes too difficult. It's very rare to actually get there when you're making a goal which is not aligned with who you are and what you genuinely want. It's something crazy, like the stats I've heard about goal setting are like 92% of people who set their goals don't get there. 8% success rate. It's like, you ask yourself, why is that?
Yeah.
And a huge chunk of the reason is because you don't value it enough. It's not in line with your values. So don't bother doing it if it's not something that you care enough about.
Do you think it's also that people actually, when they think or when they realize the amount of work required to reach a goal, do you think there's a bit of that in there as well? Like, people fall by the wayside because actually whatever your goal is, whether it's a health goal or whether it's a professional goal, there's always work. There's always a phenomenal amount of work required to get to that end goal of whatever it is that you want to achieve. And actually, to put in that time and dedication, also when you're not sure if you're going to reach that goal you think you are, then I wonder if people do fall by the wayside because of that as well.
What was that last bit? Say that again. If you think you're gonna,
You're going to ask me to repeat something. I'm like, I don't know.
I've said it. It's out there. I don't remember it now. Is it?
Can't remember.
Wait, what was it? If you're close to achieving it?
Possibly, like even if, or that you don't know whether you're going to achieve it. With any goal that's big, right? You know, say okay, so say you want to buy a house, and you're not quite sure how you're going to get there, but you're starting to put in steps to get there. You don't know if you're going to get it, but you're going to work hard. And I guess my point is that maybe that's not a great example, but some people might fall by the wayside when it's like, oh, it's too much. I'm never going to get this. I'm never going to do it. Or if your weight loss goal is a big one, then it takes a lot, I think, to create that. And I wonder if people fall by the wayside when they realise the amount of work that goes in.
Yeah, fully. It's no, you're 100% onto it, onto something there. Yeah, because when you realise, like, you know, the size. Hey, what's the line? It's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And it's like, yeah, your goal is an elephant. It's like this 4 or 5 ton creature, or however freaking big an elephant is.
Yeah.
And you know what? You're gonna down it in a bite? No, that's never gonna happen. You're gonna
Not even in 4.
Exactly. I mean, what, as human beings, we eat like 2 kilos of food a day, maybe, and and the thing weighs 4 tons. That's it's like, do the math. You know? It's like, okay, take out the bone structure, but whatever. You got like a couple tons of meat there. Yeah, great. Okay, so
it's gonna take a while.
This could take a while. And how are you gonna do that? You're just gonna have to take it a bite at a time and just keep going until the thing is done. But no, you're onto it, because there's a lot of things I want to delve into with that. So the size of the goal, that's why it's important to park it and just to focus on the micro actions. So we've mentioned that already. Then we talked about it last week as well, visualizing the outcome, right? So you're making it more real as you go along by visualizing the outcome. So it's like every time you take a step forward towards it, you've completed an action. It's you taking that step forward to the goal becoming a reality. So you can build a stronger vision around that. You're like, oh, I'm actually working towards this thing being a reality, right? And the size of the task definitely throws people off, but one of the things that keeps you on task, on point, is to celebrate every step of the way, right? So you're on the journey and you're like, oh crap, this is overwhelming, but how do you combat overwhelm? You only ever focus on doing one thing. You forget about everything that's not related to the goal, or you forget about the things that are not immediately important to that goal. So again, go back to that micro action, that one thing that you need to do every day. And then every time you do complete the task, is like, you know, I did that. I managed to move forward. Give yourself that little celebration, give yourself that win, because every time you attach a reward to the action that you've taken, it balances out your nervous system again to be able to take more action. You're readying yourself for more action, and you're preparing yourself to be able to accept more action as well. Whereas if you don't do that, the effort feels like grind, and then you feel like you're always going against something. It's like, I need to move forward, but it just feels so hard. It just feels so hard. But you can have the exact same problem, but because you've been rewarding the step-by-step process, you're like, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? So instead of it feeling like resistance, you're like, I'm ready to take on the next challenge. So it's about changing the perception of the amount of work that is required. It's seriously just accepting that it's going to require work, and then celebrating each step along the way and creating that visual of what it feels like to achieve that goal, so that you can actually make it a lot more likely that you can achieve it. And then conversely is keep reminding yourself of where you're coming from, because you don't want to be back there.
Yeah,
You're just like, don't want to be there. This is,
absolutely.
I'm not happy there. That's why I've decided that I want to get this thing, achieve this thing. So you're like, oh shit, I don't want to be here. Oh wow, I've got this thing over there that I'm really happy to, that would mean a lot if I get there. Keep that connection to it. Keep celebrating the actions that you take every single time along the way. And that will help change the perception of the amount of effort that you take, because the effort's going to be the same, but how you perceive that effort changes your likelihood of executing on it.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's really important. I think also I'd like to add, don't be scared of failure as well. There are going to be hiccups along the way, and try not to let them mark your progress. Oh, it's all gone. Sorry, I'm not going to do it. It's like, and I think I had that when I gave up alcohol. It was almost like ticking off every weekend was my own intrinsic reward. It was like, look,
Good.
I've done it again. I've done it again. I've done it again. And by the time 2 months, 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months came around, it was just empowering, and there was never a sense of failure. With things like sugar, I don't have quite the same resilience, but that's that's another conversation. Can't do it. I can't give it up. But yeah, it's like, don't be afraid of the setbacks and failures, because they're going to happen. And
It's
pick
again, it's like,
yourself up.
yeah, that's it. It's like, dust yourself off, get back on with it, because it's they're your greatest teachers as well, because it just
Yeah,
shows you where you don't want to be going. It's like they help you course correct, right?
yeah.
And in a
Ooh, yeah,
way, you can't.
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, like, in a way, you do have to be a little bit of a psychopath as well. You have to literally be like, every bad thing that happens, like, nope, I'm spinning that around and I'm making that
Yep.
mean something positive. Because if you don't, then you're just going to keep taking those punches until one day you're going to get punched out, and you're out
Gonna
off to the
knock you
count of 10.
down. Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
you just want to be like Rocky, and just like, it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. And you just keep going, and you keep assigning positivity to the failure. And you're like, yeah, I learned something from this, and I'm going to keep going.
And we can record that clip for anyone that wants it, of Gorinda doing the Rocky. I want to say soliloquy. I don't know why, but it is.
It is. I mean, like, the whole thing is like 2 minutes long. You're like, dude, well,
We can
we'll
we can
record a
record that for
soliloquy.
you.
Yeah, for the
Soliloquy is so
hardcore,
good one.
for the hardcore fans out there, if you want that soliloquy, just write in. I want to send it to the tens and tens of you who are listening and watching.
Exactly.
I
Oh,
can
dear.
personalize it as well. I'll say your name and address you.
And that can be yours, free of
Yeah,
charge,
exactly. That's it.
to anyone that wants it. I
Yeah.
think I
Just
have
all you
that
have to
sort
do
of.
is just tell people about the podcast, and then it's all yours.
There you go. I do think I have you doing that on video somewhere on my phone, I'm sure.
Really?
I can't remember.
You
Yeah,
might.
I think you
Okay.
sent me many of those things. I don't
Oh,
know. I get lost. I get confused.
it
You're
might have
like, did
been.
I?
Yeah, because it might have been for. Well, it might have been on Instagram, because I did it for my boy Robbie when he had a white collar boxing match, and then
Oh,
so I
nice.
just did a whole bunch of speeches for him. Just it's like part
Getting
of
ready.
the prep, part of the prep. Yeah, that was a couple of years ago. Jeez, yeah, that was a couple of years ago now. It was like March
Wow.
2019. Holy crap, something like that.
Some time
That's
ago.
epic.
You still
Yeah,
do the
a long
speech
time.
though. Still do the
Yeah,
speech.
exactly. All right, getting back on point. It ain't about how hard you
Yeah.
hit it. You just
Yeah.
gotta keep rolling forward,
Keep
and
going.
yeah, that's it. It's just failure is just like, I mean, obviously it's gonna knock you. It's like sometimes it just happens. You just get fucking winded. You're like, oh my
Yeah.
god, I can't believe this has just happened. But you know, dust
Your
it
body
off,
learns from it. Your
recover.
brain learns from
Yeah,
it. You learn from all of that,
yeah,
and you know that you won't go back to that. It's all a learning curve. When you're trying to change something that's ingrained within your body or within your reality, it's going to take time, and it is going to take those knockbacks. It doesn't just happen perfectly 100% overnight. You're changing a fundamental thing about you, so
yeah,
don't be too hard on yourself, I think, as well.
yeah, big time. Exactly. It's just, and a good way to do that is to pull yourself out of the situation. So
Hmm.
you're zooming out and you're looking at everything. You know how a couple of weeks ago we were just talking about how I just laugh at myself when I realize I'm being a dick
Yeah,
to myself.
yeah,
Like I get angry and then I just start laughing because it's like
yeah,
there's a level of awareness that starts getting built in there.
yeah.
Yeah, that has been built in now, and so I'll just have a little go at myself and then I'll just start cracking up about it. Like, cool, and then
No, it's
just
good.
instead,
It's really
yeah.
good.
So instead, it's like and that kind of triggers me to zoom out as
Yeah,
well. So I just pull out a little bit and I go, all right, what's going on here, really? And then I try my best to figure it out, or if I need
yeah,
a conversation to be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about something. Can you just color it for me with, ask me questions, whatever, something that
yeah.
triggers you. That's why it's good to have good people around you to be able to just ask
Oh my
questions.
God. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to say that you say you get angry, because I know when something's going on with me, I'll get agitated and then I'll cry. And then, and it's almost like when I cry, it's not like, oh, no, it's almost like it just purges whatever I'm feeling out. And then I feel better, and then I get
Yeah,
clarity.
yeah,
So everyone has different emotions around, I don't know, whatever it is that you're struggling with, and I think I don't think I'll be alone in that. I think a lot of women would probably, you cry out of frustration sometimes as well. So, and then that gets it out, and then once it's out, you can suddenly like do that out of focus and then come back in.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
like it's kind of that frustration is also it's a necessary condition of high performance as well. So
Mm.
because if you're getting frustrated about something, it's a couple of things. Is like you care enough,
Mm.
and and then it's just you're actually on the cusp of something important there as well. You
Yeah.
can kind of tell because you can probably, I think, with almost like 100% accuracy, every time you've cried about it and then you come out of it on the other side, you come out better, right? It's
Mm.
like you've figured out, okay, I've got that frustration out
Yeah.
of the way. I've learned from it, and I've learned from the thing that was frustrating me, and now I'm back
Mm.
on track.
You gain clarity. And I think crying or any big emotional outlet is hugely important, because it releases that pent up emotion in your body. And I know, and from when I used to do cranial sacral therapy with I didn't do it, I'd have it done to me. A lot of the time after, whatever emotion was stuck in my body, it would come out as just like almost like angry crying, and then once it had gone, and it was like instantly I felt lifted. I don't know if you've ever had that or ever had like an emotional release from craniosacral, but always with me, it would be about a day later, and it would be like it was bubbling up, and then it would just go. And I'd love to know if anyone listening has had similar situations or experiences, because I don't think I'm alone in that feeling of release when you get that big emotional feeling and then it just goes, and then you
No,
feel light.
yeah, no, not at all. Yeah, I'm
Have you
pretty
ever
sure
had anything
everybody's.
like that? Maybe not that, but have you ever felt like a big emotion bubble up and then it just goes when you've had stuff like that? Even in KT, I would have thought.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's happened. It's like especially when I was doing some breathwork classes, and
Oh, okay.
some like just some fascinating feelings that come out of that. It's like I've seen it happen to people as well as like
Mm.
diaphragm release work, or just doing a bit of like getting into the abdominals somehow, and then some people can store some emotions there as well. You can just start crying, and you're like, I don't even know
Yeah,
why I'm crying. It's like it's fine.
it's
Don't worry
great.
about it.
It's the
Yeah,
best thing. It's awesome. It's like when people say, sorry, I'm crying, it's like, no, No apologies here. It's the best thing for you. I'm so happy that you're crying because it means that we've got somewhere and that you're feeling a release. That's awesome, because I've had that when you start working on people's breathing and getting it away from their chest or away from their shoulders into their abdomen, there's some big releases. And
right.
And it is. And I think it's so weird that people find crying, it's like, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm crying. And I do it as well. And actually, it's like, no, it's beautiful. My son does it. Sorry, I'm crying. It's like, oh, it's great. Get it out. That's brilliant. I think more people should cry. Just some cry sessions. I'm not going to do it now.
Now, right now, cry. I'm gonna say, I'll start saying some awful stuff about you just to try and induce it. You're shit, Jude. You're never going to be good enough.
Don't make me come over there.
You're just going to fucking shin me, like sweep my legs from underneath me with your Muay Thai skills. I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take the piss. I've been put in my place now.
You can make me cry, it's okay.
But you'll pay for it later. That's what that sounded like.
But I will get you back. No.
Yeah.
I'll make you cry.
Make me cry?
Yeah.
You're going to make me cry?
Yeah.
Jeez. All right. So you're just gonna come up here and just that's it. The whole point is to make me cry.
I do. I don't think I could do it.
You're gonna start creating a list of what you think all my insecurities are, and just start reading them off one by one until you get a reaction. You just be like, your eyebrows suck. No, that didn't quite work. You're fucking fat and old. No, that didn't work either.
No. Let's not make each other cry. Can you imagine the podcast? It's 5 minutes of us crying.
Yeah, that would be something.
It would be something, actually. It would be good. It would be powerful, is what it would be.
Yeah, exactly.
Moving on.
Yeah. Yes, so in like emotional releases, just like I think a lot of issues that we end up having, even physical issues, can come down to emotional pain as well. Just like holding on to stuff like one of the fascinating ones is having an emotional release. For me personally, is like I've had an emotional release or something, or like from that breath work, for example, and it was just like I just feel so expansive and light, like you've just had something sitting on your chest just come off, and you're like, I didn't even realize I was experiencing that, So there's a lot of power in there as well, because you said it, you nailed it. It's like you start feeling light, you can feel taller, you feel, I call it like decompressed. You just feel like you've let go. There's no pressure within you, which is weighing you down. You're able to, you're light on your feet, float like a butterfly.
That definitely, but you feel mentally lighter as well. Like you can almost, it's like the calm after the storm, isn't it? You can just think a bit clearer. It's not as bad as you thought it was. So when you get in your head and that's when maybe the crying might start, and then afterwards it's like, what was I crying about? And I think that's beautiful, because it means that that's gone. You've released that emotion, that thought from your body. I'm all for people crying in sessions and having releases in sessions, because it means that we can move on, and that's going to help their pain.
Yeah, okay. I just had a vision of just people showing up just to cry in the class now. It's not what I do. This is just a side effect of what happens. It's not always as well. But, fine.
Well, that's fine. Let's talk about it. But I think that's part of our job as well. It's like, I know we're not therapists in any way, shape or form, but people do come in and it's almost like they need to talk before they do the movement. Otherwise, if they're trying to move when there's stuff on their mind, forget it. So I guess in a way, getting them to release and stuff, or if you can see they're agitated, actually trying to delve into it a little bit, which I guess over the years I've got quite experienced at, you can kind of tell if someone comes in and they're just not right, then you need to get those words out, because otherwise they're not going to have a good session.
Yeah, fully. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. I mean, like the amount of times that I've like, you got the plan for the session for your client, and then when I was seeing people face to face, so they come through the door and you're like, oh, something's not right. And then you go, okay, I'm going to have to scrap what I had planned for you, because I can see, like, from whatever kind of day you've had, your stress is like through the roof.
Yep.
And if I do an intense session with you, that's just going to push you beyond a level that you can actually handle. So
it's not going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, because even though it's a good stress on the body, doing exercise, it's still a stress. So your recovery is going to be shocking. So it was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to adapt that, bring it right down, maybe get them to get in tune with the here and now, rather than being in the state that they're in. And just like one way of doing it is like focusing on the breathing, or just keeping it light, and then building back up from there.
Yeah, that's really good. I was going to ask you, do you feel that you have a level of intuition with things like that? I know it's not easy to tell when someone walks through your door how they're feeling, but do you feel like you get that intuitive moment where you're like, there's just something off, there's something not right? Do you have that?
Yeah, good question. I think, well, it's easier once you get to know your clients a bit more, right? So it's like straight off the bat, it's a little bit tricky to know if somebody is just, like, let's just say a little bit scattered, just as is, to begin with, or if they're overtly calm on the other end of the scale. But then you get to know them a little bit. Like, oh, okay, you could do with being G'd up a little bit more, or you could do with being brought back down a little bit as well, or try and ingrain some focus in you or something. But yeah, I think a lot of it is just the more I learn about the body and how stuff that we're holding on to, like, mentally, can affect how we function physically, then it becomes easier to spot that kind of thing. Yeah. I know if I would be intuitive around it, I'd just try and pay attention to the signals. Is basically it.
Okay, cool.
Well, what do you think?
No, I'm always interested to know if people think they have a high level of intuition or not. I know I do, and we can head into the next subject, if you like, where I can talk about that instance or one of the instances, which leads us on to something that we were going to talk about working under pressure. It's like, who knows if I have a high level of intuition? I think I do. But there was an instance a couple of years ago, or just under a couple of years ago, where my dad basically had quite a major heart attack. And the week leading up to it, there was just something off. He kept ringing me up and going, I don't feel good. And I was like, well, tell me how you feel. What do you feel? I just feel breathless. Anything else? No. Then there was just one day when he rang me up and he was like, I don't feel like eating. I was like, okay, well, you got a stomachache. What's going on? He's like, no, I just don't feel good. Just feel a bit breathless. And then he said this thing where he's like, so he's got a doggy who doesn't leave his side. And he was like, and the dog's not eating either, and he's not leaving my side. And that's when my spidey senses started to prick up a little bit more. And I was like, that's a bit weird. I'm feeling a bit weird. And that's when the intuition started to kick in. And good or bad, I can just kind of feel it in my core, if you like. And I just didn't feel right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And let me be clear with this with my dad. His symptoms were not typical of what happens at an onset of a heart attack. There was no pain, there was no radiation, there was nothing through his jaw into his shoulder, nothing apart from breathlessness. That's all he had. That's all we had to go on. But I just couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, and I didn't know what it was. And for 1 second, I just couldn't. It didn't even think about his heart, even though he was on lots of medication, all that sort of stuff. Like everything that he went to, all his appointments with the doctor, he was fine. Blood pressure was fine. Everything was fine. And then one day he was going to pick up my mum about a week later. And at about 4 a.m, I had about 10, 11 texts from my mum, phone calls saying Dad's collapsed, he's in the hospital. And mum went to the hospital to see how he was, and they kind of basically took her into a room and like, look, it's bad, we put him into a coma, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, okay. And then for some reason she went home, and then we went back during the day, and the consultant came around and went, oh yeah, you've had a major heart attack. And he was shocked. We were all shocked. We were like, oh, okay, that's new, because his symptoms did not present as they should. And so I guess it's a really important thing to say that, I don't know, I just had this instinct that there was something wrong, but I couldn't place it. But had I acted on those instincts and, I don't know, told Dad not to go to the airport to pick my mum up and stay at home in bed, he would have died. Because had he not been at the airport at the time where they have like crash teams and they got him to a hospital within 20 minutes and they basically saved his life, he wouldn't be here today. So because I beat myself up for ages about, you should have trusted your instinct. God damn, you should have done something about that. But I think it played out as it should have. So that was one thing. But the other thing, if I could then move it on to working under pressure and this whole kind of pressure situation. So my dad had a couple of angiograms, which is where they try and clear the blockages within the heart. And after the second one, we were all in the room with him, people were milling around, and he just wasn't right. And I was watching his stats go up and down. I could see his blood pressure fluctuating and his heart rate fluctuating. I could see his respiratory stuff fluctuating, and I was like, and I was getting that weird instinct feeling again. It's like, oh, something's not right, something's not right. And then he just started coughing, and no one else was noticing it, but I just kept watching this graph, and I was like, I'm really not happy about this. Right, this is the time to actually trust your instincts and do something about it. And it was just this whole thing of, it's now, I've just got to do it now. I've got to tell someone, and I've got to like work the room and get everyone out. So I just and I'm not like this at all as a person. I've never had to be in this situation before, but I just got up and went, right, you go over there, you get out of the room, you go over there, you come here, he needs a consultant now, get him in. And within probably about 2 minutes, the consultant was in, administering quite a lot of IV to him, and everything just started to come down and like tip back to normal. He stopped coughing, and he just started to like, colour came back to his face and all that. So it was just a conversation that I thought we might have about instinct, first of all, but also pressured situations and how you might be under pressure. I had no idea whether I would be like that or not. Like, that's a high pressure situation where I could see my dad struggling, and it was like, you could potentially go into cardiac arrest, because no one was noticing it. And I was like, I'm noticing, I'm going to do something about that. So it was like, oh, I do function well under high pressure situations. And I know that I do in work, I have to have deadlines. I quite like things like that, but I've never really experienced a sort of threatening to life situation like that before. And it was maybe reassuring to know that I trusted my instinct that time. I knew what it felt like, and I did something about it. And thank God I did, because I think it was fairly, important. So, yeah.
Yeah. Your dad's doing well now?
He's fine. Yeah, he's way better. All throughout the COVID time, he's been fine and healthy. And actually, because they cleared a blockage within his heart, I think he's actually doing a lot better than he has been for the last 2 years. But I would really like to push that message out there that my dad has type 2 diabetes, and he didn't present with the normal symptoms because of the type 2. And he wasn't getting the radiating pain. He wasn't getting any kind of symptoms like that. It was purely that he had breathlessness. And that wasn't enough for me to realize that he was like, he was basically having a heart attack for about a week, and no one really picked up on it. So I think that's an important thing to say within the podcast, and hopefully it just might help someone somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. Some powerful stuff. Yeah, if you've got some contraindications, and just know that it can look different, right?
Yeah, they always will. And that's the thing, when you see those symptoms online and they're like, oh, here's a checklist of what you need to look out for a heart attack. It's not always that way. So if you feel like something's wrong either with your health or with someone close to you, you feel, and there's a weird instinct there, go and get it checked out. I definitely think that was kind of my message within all of that as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's great. And like what did you notice kind of like descending upon you when you realized that you've got to act now? Like, what zone did you enter?
What, in terms of emotion, or what do you mean?
It's like, what zone did you enter to, like, mentally, for you to just take control of that situation and have everything coordinated? Like, do you remember what that felt like? Do you remember
Yeah.
what time felt like? Do you remember,
Yeah.
were you aware of your actions, or were you beside yourself? Like, what was going on?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I could feel it building up like a pressure in me. I just kept watching the screen. It was almost like this time bomb. I could see all his stats going up and down, and it was making me feel agitated and stressed. And no one else was really figuring it out. And I just kept watching. I was watching my dad struggling, and I kept going, "Are you okay?" And it just got to a point where it's almost like I was about to have a panic attack or something. It was just making me really, really uncomfortable. And I was just like, now, no, this is not happening again. I'm not doing this again. And I just stood up, and I didn't really know what I was doing. So it was almost out of body. I did not know what I was doing. I was like, I've just got to do something. And that's when I guess it's a bit like when I was performing. It's like now, and I just get very, very calm. And I was like, you need to go out there. You need to take and do that. And then you need to go out there, and she needs to come in here. And it was, I don't know, it is a bit out of body for me. But it was the panic rising and this very, very uncomfortable feeling of something's very wrong and I'm not happy. And before it overrode me, I was like, fuck it, I'm going to do something. And I didn't know, that point, there's always a moment where you're like, I'm not sure, or should I, or, and it's almost like I overrode it. And I was like, no, I don't care if this is a stupid question. I don't care if people shout at me. I'd rather people shout at me than my dad go into arrest or something. So it was almost like the pressure overrode everything else, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Was it? Yeah. So you kind of like crossed that threshold. Yeah. It sounds quite similar to what you described with when you would perform. Like the anticipation rises. You feel incredibly nervous right before the moment. You have to perform your solo, and then it kicks in, and then you're just flowing. You're just in the
This
zone.
was more uncomfortable. This was more, I felt sick and very uncomfortable, and I obviously haven't prepared for it in any way, shape or form like I would have a performance. So it was just like, this is not going to happen again. You already felt your intuition and messed it up once, so this isn't happening again, and you can do something about this now. So that's kind of what propelled me, is that I've got to do something about this. So
And when you kind of got into that state, was it just pure clarity for you?
yeah, it's almost like I just became bossy, and I'm not a bossy person. And I just took control of the room, and I was like, now you come here, you need to get him in, you need to do this. And it's amazing, however you are as a person, when something is threatening to you or someone you love, like, you will step up for sure. So it was interesting to see, and it was just a question that I wanted to ask and for us to discuss on the podcast. It's like, how are you under pressure? Do you step up in pressured situations? And it might not be that was quite life-threatening, let's face it, but in other, like, time crunches or deadlines or stressful situations, I don't know if you've ever been in one, but I know that we have in our martial arts, but I mean like an unprecedented life. And how were you in that? That was the first time that I've ever experienced that. So it was just a thought that came to me.
Yeah, it's interesting because hearing you describe it is like, it sounds quite similar to getting into peak performing states. Is like there's something at stake, number one. So there's a sense of urgency attached to it.
Yes.
Which can be, that's the stakes and the urgency can be the same thing or it can be separate. But in your case, it was a similar sort of thing. So it's like the stakes, for example, is like if it's just in terms of your own performance, is like it's high stakes because the outcome means a lot to you, and there's a sense of urgency because there's a deadline. And in this way, is like okay, it's not really a deadline, but there's a sense of urgency here.
Yes.
And then that frustration we talked about earlier, which is in your case is like that feeling, that kind of like sick feeling, that super agitation was just rising, 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 and that is a precursor to that level of performance. And then you kind of cross this threshold where you where everything just melds into clarity, and you don't
Yeah.
really know what you're doing, but you're doing it, and that sounds like the flow state. You know,
Yeah.
you're not really aware of time. You're just aware of performing the thing that you need to perform,
Yeah.
and pulling it off. And yeah, so because the reason I say that is there's the similarities there, because those are kind of like the conditions which are required for performing at a high level, or just performing well. Or like if somebody is looking for you know, productivity improvement, for example, it's like you just want to get better at the thing that you like to do,
Yeah.
then those are some of the conditions that are required for that, for you to actually go about achieving that thing and achieving it well, and learning to do that thing well, so you can execute it on the when you're required to execute it, which is which is interesting. Yeah, it's amazing to be able to find, like, you know, the links between all these kinds of like different kinds of situations.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
I think because I mean from a personal level, when I was like back in corporate, and I started realizing that I didn't actually, before I really realized that I didn't want to be there, my performance was already starting to wane, and I was like,
Really.
yeah, I was just on a bit of a downward trend, and I was just feeling secure and not doing as much work as I should have been doing.
Oh, so it was
And
performance related. You just weren't putting in the
yeah,
work. Is that what it was?
yeah,
Right.
yeah. And then obviously, because there's some metrics that need to be achieved in a corporate environment, got picked up on, and then I got set a ludicrous target to achieve, which was, hey, you got to do this basically, and I was like, all right, fine, I'll just do it. I had like 5 weeks, I think, to execute on this thing, and it's like, and it just because we were a holding company, which meant we had subsidiary companies underneath us.
Right.
I had to do all the work that was coming in from the subsidiary companies. If I didn't do them, they're fucked, not just us as well,
Oh,
right?
wow. Okay.
So
That's pressure. That's some serious
yeah,
pressure.
yeah. But you know what is like, I didn't even notice that. It was just more like when I got called on it, I realized, oh yeah, I can't just coast and coast my days out of here, and it was more like, all right, well, I'm just gonna. It was this strange sensation of like, all right, well, you set me a ludicrous target. I'm just gonna fucking do it. Like, I'm just
Bring it.
that's what's gonna happen. And then when I hit it, it was a surprise, because apparently they were like, if you got 80% of the way there, we would have been like, amazing, well done. But I did the whole thing.
Wow.
I got 100% of the work in, and so they were like, shit, okay, when you put your mind to it, you can actually do this.
You can actually do
And
stuff.
yeah, and so the lesson there is like, you know, I was too dumb to realize this 10 years ago, but in the sense that I was like, I mean, I wouldn't have found myself in that position if I knew exactly what the process was to actually do well with myself. But but also, I mean, like, there's different situation going on there. I just didn't want to be there, right? It was like
Yeah.
I realized, like, I'm not going to be doing this job, so I don't want this life. I want something else. So obviously, there's that hanging over me. But
Yeah.
ultimately, when it mattered, like I pulled through a lot more than was expected. But if you think about what that took, it was a deadline. There was
Yeah.
a sense of there was a sense of urgency, and that created the pressure to perform. And what that does is gives you that focus,
Yes.
and your and you just, yeah, and that puts you in that state of getting shit done. And
Foveate focus, isn't it?
yeah, so you just end up realizing that actually I'm capable of a hell of a lot more than I ever let myself believe. And so, it comes back into the line of work that we're in, but also for people in general is if if you're like struggling, if you're just like dilly dallying around a bit, you're struggling to become productive on something which you say you value, then create a sense of urgency around it.
It's a
Create
really good idea.
create a sense of urgency around it by creating a deadline. Make that deadline mean something by attaching some sort of meaning to it. It's like one thing that people like to do is on the day that I've said I'm going to complete this task by, is to I'm going to donate some cash to an organization that I absolutely hate if I don't get it done.
I like that. So it's like, oh
set,
no.
yeah, exactly. So it's like it's set to go out if I haven't achieved this.
That's
And
brilliant.
yeah, or reverse the other way. You can do two things. You can like do something which would make your screen crawl, and the other way, which
Okay.
is
Yeah.
reward yourself as well. It's like make it as intrinsic as possible, but
Yeah.
you could obviously like throw in an external reward in there as well. So you make that outcome mean something more than just achieving the outcome, and that deadline, that sense of urgency, when that kind of constraint is placed on you. Depends on the extent of it, but the constraint can, instead of being overwhelming, can really help you focus and achieve.
So knowing what you know now, and I'm just trying to put this into words. So you weren't doing that deadline for you. That was your job. How did you feel once you completed that deadline? Were you like, yeah, piece of cake? Were you happy? Were you just like, actually, I'm not that bothered. I'm not happy where I am. Did that kind of propel you to think that actually maybe you need to change things up?
No, I only realized how big the target was when I got told is like we would have been extremely happy if you got 80% of the work done.
Right.
So the fact that you got that done, I was like, oh shit, okay, that's amazing. And it was also for fear of losing a job and not having anything to fall back on. Well,
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
weird. It's more like, yeah, it's just I don't want to. I don't want to be. I don't want to be let go. I don't want to have that be the thing. In a way, it's like I never really cared about that, but it was also. But I guess maybe there was a sense of pride. There was like just
No one wants
don't
to
fuck
be
around.
fired or leave a
Yeah,
job. Do you know what I mean? For that, it's like you
yeah,
wouldn't want that. I think
yeah,
so.
yeah. Well, if you think about like I'm more reflective now than I was
Yeah.
then, and as a consequence of realizing that I need to change my career, I started to become a hell of a lot more reflective. So all of that stuff was really, really important for my development. But
Same.
but yeah, looking back on it, if I didn't achieve that and I got pushed out the door, then I've got this thing hanging over me, weighing more on me, which is, when push comes to shove, you can't do this thing. You can't do it. And so, whereas it's the other way instead for me is like when push comes to shove, it's like I can fucking do this. I don't care what's in my way. I will do
Yeah.
this.
Oh yeah, you
And
definitely showed that. I wondered
yeah,
if you
and
hadn't done it. I was just
yeah,
going to say, if you hadn't have done it, would you have proved it later on as well? That you
well, yeah,
could have gone both ways.
well, yeah. That's the thing because it would have been more. I think it would have been more difficult to achieve. It's like it's still achievable because we were talking about it earlier. It's like you're not a victim. You have things in your control. But I think I probably would have had a greater sense of doubt. And doubt kills your motivation. So it
You're
would have
right.
been it would have been harder to overcome. But yeah, who knows? It's like
You would have.
would I be like sitting here,
Mm.
standing here chatting to you right now, doing this podcast? Like I don't know. It's like it's just even though it's
It's
like
hard to know, isn't it?
it's
Yeah.
like it's one small event in the scope of my life, but at the same time it has a big bearing. And but like since then, I have in those push comes to shove crunch moments back against the wall times is like I've shown that I can come out a bit better on the other side, like every time.
There you go.
I think there's just, yeah, I mean, it could be a learned thing, but it's also, there's a stubbornness there as well. I think I'm just like, fuck that, I'm not going to let that dictate me. I'm in control of that
That's
shit.
good. It's definitely a personality trait. I don't think everyone has that fuck it no. I think, you know, that's definitely a characteristic of you. I think of me as well, actually. It's like, nah, fuck that. I'm not going to let that get to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to ride through this.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, like, interestingly, you know, because, you know, we were reading Blueprint, the DNA Makes Us Who We Are by Robert Plomin. Like,
you were reading Blueprint. I was moaning about Blueprint.
Yeah, I'm bored of this. This is shit. And I was like, yeah, there's a lot of problems with this book, but I mean, if there's one thing, I mean, yeah, like, I mean, the reason why I remind you, there's a bunch of things about it, but one of the things is like, you know, essentially is like on average, 50% of our traits, our personality traits, are like genetically inherited, right? Is the theory. And so, like, I know what I know especially my mum is like, if somebody tells her that she can't do something, she's like, nope, I'm doing
nice.
it. I do not care.
I love it.
Yeah, so is which is fantastic, you know. So it's basically is kind of, I guess it's ingrained in me, and it's just the environment I've been in has allowed that to come through as well, instead of being shut down. So yeah, so there is a genetic component to the personality trait, but
interesting.
But yeah, but at the same time, you know, environment does have a bearing on how we behave and how we act. So I don't know, maybe if I didn't do it that time, maybe it would have made it less likely for the genetic trait to come through, let's say.
Who knows? We can't tell, but
exactly.
Well done for you for doing it. It sounds like you actually just smashed it and excelled, and they were like, oh, which must have felt amazing. That must have felt amazing.
Which is nice. It's like, I didn't even know. I just thought, all right, well, I've got to get this thing done. Didn't realize it was a ridiculous target. I just did it. And I was like, okay, fine.
They were like, oh, okay, Neo, right.
Yeah. A Geo.
Geo, the one in certain situations and a certain location.
Yeah, exactly. Certain situations, certain conditions, certain locations, certain time.
And that's it.
Yeah, that's it. That was
limited time only.
Yeah, that was like one of the 4 times
in my life.
Yeah, exactly, in my life, and probably one of the other times was when I was a baby. So, you know, because you're a bit, yeah.
God,
that's it. That's it. Yeah. So it's interesting. Seeing how, like, you know, the different kinds of stressful situations, you know, you're talking about life or death.
Yeah.
I'm talking about career suicide or not.
Yeah. Similar though. It all has its bearing, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the point, is like you can find the processes that are the same in all these different scenarios. And for people trying to achieve a goal, is like whatever that health and fitness goal is there's a process which gets you to the place that you want to be with a greater chance of success than not following that process. Because you can think about it, you know, it's like, you know, how long could somebody be saying is like, oh, I need to get out of back pain, I'm just going to make it happen, and then
a very long time.
You do this one thing half-assed, and you do another thing half-assed. You're like, okay, well, maybe if I just, you know, foam roll this and things will be okay, or maybe I'll just do this one exercise, or maybe I'll just take this. And it's like, well, if you don't set a clear path to your success and create that sense of urgency around it, it makes sense that you're going to be hanging around in pain for a while. But then, you know, especially you, it's like you get a ton of people coming your way who have dealt with it for a longest time, and also have gone through every other kind of therapy, and it's not worked for them. It's been years, and then you made it work for them. And because, you know, that could be a part of,
I think,
part of the thing as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you must have it as well, where I get a lot of, this is a last resort, this is my only hope before surgery, and you must have that as well. And it's great, but it's also it is sad at the same time. But I'm so glad you're here before you're doing surgery. And then I think it is important to explain that it's not a quick fix. It's going to take some time.
Absolutely.
You've got to stick with it. I'm really glad that you've hired a professional to do it. You know, actually getting help, which I think we've talked about before, getting help with something and professional help is important, because not only do they guide you, or we guide you through that process and we know what we're doing, but also it gives you those small goals each week to stick to as well. So us as part of someone's rehab, I think, is really key, because it helps them to stick within that goal setting. And hopefully we can say, try not to look at the bigger picture. Yes, there are ups and downs. But yeah, just having someone doing it for you, I think, is obviously not doing it for you, but giving you the tools to help yourself is really important. I couldn't do it on my own. I'd go to someone. If I hurt my back, yes, I'd know what to do, but actually having someone put something in place for me and devise a plan and helping me get through it is invaluable.
Yeah.
You know,
You just you kind of have to, I mean, you have to remove yourself from the equation a little bit in that sense, because I mean, you're living with it, you're in it, so it is difficult to know, like, I'm talking about you as a person who is an expert in helping people out of back pain, right? But even for yourself, when you get it, it's like, well, I need to step outside of myself, because I can bias what I think is going on because it's me.
Yep.
So I need somebody else to look at it, and they'll look at it and be like, oh, that's what's going on. Okay, cool.
Exactly.
And then that's really helpful. And then for people, especially who's like, they're not experts, the only thing they know about is the pain that they're experiencing, is like, go and hire somebody who's going to make your job easier to achieve this. And
to get that goal.
It's not a question of expense, it's a question of value, because at the end of the day, when you're there, what's your life going to feel like? It's a priceless outcome that you're going for. Yeah,
I agree. And something, as you were saying that, it made me think of something else, but I think it might have gone. So, no, I can't remember. Sorry, it's gone. Carry on.
Happens. It's going to happen at least once a podcast.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah.
What was the next thing we were going to talk about?
That was, you said, so pressure. Oh, you said something about perception and reality. You had an example about that.
I did. And actually, it was something that I was reading the other day about whether you drink alcohol or not. We could relate it to anything. So it's perception is not reality. It's perception is your reality. So if you are not drinking, for example, and you go to an event, you're probably going to notice more people that aren't drinking, maybe, or you're going to notice different things versus when you are drinking. Or, for example, when we read a book, the same book, we get different things from it because our perception of it is different because of our history, our backgrounds, everything. So it was this whole idea of perception isn't reality. The way we perceive things isn't necessarily reality. It's our reality because of our experiences and our beliefs and how we are as a person. So it was just based on that, really, and wanted to discuss it.
What are you hoping to get out of it? I want to figure out
whether that's right. What you think about that. So say we were at the same event, whatever the event is, we're going to pick up on different things, right? Because we have different interests or we think a different way. And I guess it is just this whole perception of reality. It's like everyone's reality is going to be different because everyone's had different experiences. And so I'm not really hoping to get anything out of it. I thought it was an interesting idea. It's like, oh yeah, I haven't really thought of it like that, but it's true. It's like the way I think about things, it's going to be marked by, or how I approach things is going to be marked by how I think about things and how I've been brought up and my environment and what I've studied and what I haven't studied, and even down to how I train, what I eat, how I sleep, like everything is going to have an effect on my perception of reality. And I guess I just wanted your thoughts on it. It's like, what do you think? Okay, we went to the same event or we experienced the same thing. Are we going to come away with different things? Or is it going to be like, oh, yeah, it's exactly the same. Oh, you know, we watched the same film and we come away with different things.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was an interesting concept. It's like, yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, tell me.
Tell you.
Tell me.
Tell me, oh guru.
A wise one. Geo.
Yeah. Yeah, fully. Perception is not reality. It's just a slither of reality, but then a slither of reality that is distorted by the way you approach the world.
Yes.
So it's, well, let's put it this way. Your brain is taking in literally millions and millions and millions of bits of information every second from your senses, from touch, sound, sight, taste, smell,
Yeah.
to name the 5 main senses as well. But then obviously, you know, you got interoception, is like stuff coming from within the body. It's taking in all that information, but it's just getting rid of almost all of it and making you pay attention to small, like it's just infinitesimally small amount of it.
Yeah.
So you're basically discarding most of reality every single second of the day and only paying attention to the things that are salient to you. What do you want to pay attention to? So a good one is like, you know, you could be walking down the street, you don't notice you're in a busy street, there's cars going past constantly, but you're not really paying attention to, you know, the colors of the cars. It's just like this stream of cars going by, you don't really notice. But then as soon as you tell yourself, okay, pay like yellow cars, you start seeing yellow cars everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And then if you switch that and you start saying, okay, I'm going to pay attention to red cars, you don't notice the yellow cars anymore. You're just going to see the red cars.
Yeah.
So, and there's that great experiment of two different teams, like, you know, one white team, one blue team, or something like that, and they're just the two teams are passing a basketball between them, right? So blue team's passing a basketball between them, white team's passing a basketball between them, but they're all like mingling around. And then in the middle of all this, like, you're told to follow a basketball. You're like, okay, pay attention to what's happening to the basketball. And so you're paying attention, you're just looking at where the basketball is going and making sure you pay attention. And then unbeknownst to you, there's a person dressed as an ape that dances across the screen.
Yeah.
And so everybody, when the experiment's over, they asked the people who participated, like, you know, how many passes were made between the blue team and between the white team. We were like, everybody's like throwing out the numbers and like, okay, cool. Did you notice the ape go past the screen? Everybody's like, what?
No.
Yeah, it's like they didn't. It wasn't important to them. So that wasn't. They could not be convinced that that had happened as well. So you blanked it out, even though it was real. It was a thing that happened.
Yeah.
So your perception is not reality, right?
It's an attention thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's literally the salience network in the brain, right? It's like, this is what it's paying attention to. It's paying attention to the things that are in line with your values, are in line with your immediate goals, like, you know, what you're seeking right now. It's just, like, again, another simple example. You're just going shopping. It's like, okay, I need to buy some eggs. You know, you're looking at you're in this place where you don't really know. So all you're doing is like darting between areas just to find the eggs, and you just don't even realize that you walk past the chocolate aisle, which always gets you, I guess, you're salivating, you know, but you're not paying attention to that because you just want the eggs. So, it's your perception of the world is a distortion of a slither of reality.
It's your reality, yeah.
And so it can, is the things that you're saying, it's going to get shaped by, you know, first of all, kind of like your genetic influence, your environment, the experiences that you have, the things that you expose yourself to. It's and even then, it's just never going to explain everything around you. I mean, that's why it's like kind of it's also the reason the brain does that is for the sake of your sanity. Otherwise, you're overwhelmed with information, and you don't know what to do with it. So it's amazing that we have this capacity to take in all this information, but we're doing away with it because we're kind of not able to handle it, which is amazing in a way. It's kind of like, why do we have
It is amazing.
process all the information then? Yeah, but because I guess because your salience changes. I guess is the reason why you can get all these millions of bits of information. You're paying attention to like 7 bits in your conscious mind, but those 7 bits can be entirely different if all of a sudden your life is threatened. So you don't need to pay attention to what your phone is saying. You need to pay attention to getting the fuck out of the situation. And,
exactly.
And so that might be why, but that's pure speculation. I don't really know, but there was something else I was going to say about that, but I kind of forgot. So
that's okay. And isn't it interesting that you can change your reality at any given moment that you want? It's like, okay, so I'll give you the example that I was talking about. So if you're not drinking, you're going to maybe notice more people that are not drinking. Had I not given up alcohol, then I probably wouldn't have even had that. So it's almost that thing of you can change your attention, your reality at any given moment, right? If you turn around to me and went, oh, look at all the yellow cars, that you'd instantly change my attention, my reality. Whereas, and I love that, and I feel like I need to read a little bit more into all of that, because that a lot of what you were saying is from Livewired as well, isn't it? The book by who's Livewired by? I forgot.
David Eagleman.
Thank you, Eagleman. And I really like the idea that you create your reality. You can change it at any time. You can change your attention and your focus at any time. It's what you give your energy and focus to, isn't it? So like you say, instead of going for the chocolate, you were so fixated on getting the eggs that you walked right past it, or maybe you were on a time crunch, or maybe inside you interoception, you were trying to get somewhere, so you completely ignored, so you didn't pick up on those messages that normally you would have if you were slower. And you maybe would have gone to the chocolate aisle and got loads of chocolate if you were me. So it is that whole concept of reality and it changing all the time. And it is based on our perception. And 2 people could be sat in my studio and experiencing the experience. And I know this because I'm the teacher and this is my studio. I experience this very differently to someone coming in and having a session for the first time. And also it was a bit like what we were talking about earlier. It's like trying to get to know someone and sussing them out and being intuitive about them. And you can almost tell that moment when someone, like, this reality is normal and they're comfortable within this reality and they're used to it and they know what I'm about. And that's when you almost start to gel at the same time as well. So I don't really know where I was going with that, but it is that whole idea of, like, I suppose I'm in here, I'm the teacher, I know what's going to happen, you're the client, you've just come in here, you don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to have an exchange and then you're going to know what's going to happen, and then your reality is going to change because you'll then have that knowledge and you'll have that attention, and that's going to then change for you. So I suppose in terms of like treating people and having them come in here for back pain, that initial moment is tricky, and then the system calms down and they're more within this environment, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that made me think of was that's where I was. Yeah, now it just came to me.
You remember now?
Yeah, after you spat it out about other people, that's what I was going to say. Is like the millions of bits of information are being done away with, thrown out in the trash in somewhere else in your brain, so that you could stay sane. And that's why you kind of end up. Could be part of the reason why you end up hanging around with like-minded people, why you need to hang around with like-minded people as well, because if it's too different all the time, it's probably just going to drive you a bit crazy. So, but
also it might not sit well within your reality, and that's what I mean about changing your reality as well. If you've learned something or you've changed something within your lifestyle, and you're suddenly hanging around people that maybe don't resonate with that anymore, that perception of reality is going to change for you, and you're suddenly going to be like, I'm not sure. So I think that's what I mean as well. So yeah, absolutely, hang around with like-minded people, and it changes all the time. But I still have lots of friends that drink, but I'm less likely to go out with them regularly and more likely to do things like training because I feel more comfortable within that environment. That's my reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, it's good to be exposed to people who act differently and think differently to you. But
Massively,
if that's the only way that you behave, it's kind of destabilizing as well. It's like, oh shit, there's too much other information here. It's like, I'm not
yeah,
getting, like, you kind of, it's like we have a confirmation bias for a reason, you know? It's
mm-hmm.
like, we kind of need confirmation that what we're doing is okay. It's like, so even though it's a bias that can land us in hot water, it's an important bias because it helps us to survive. I mean, any bias that we have is there to help us to survive. So yeah, it's fascinating to think that. I think it's an important thing to have a handle on, to realize that whatever we're experiencing is just this perception, is a perception of reality, which is a distortion of a slither of reality.
Nuts, isn't it? Though it's just
It's
nuts.
the only way I can think of it, because I mean, there are
But you're
things that
right.
are, at the end of the day, there are things that are truths. Is like, I'm sure there are, like, there's objective truths to the extent that, you know, we can acknowledge without having to really think about it, that you're a human being and I'm a human being. We are from the same species.
Yes.
That is, like, that's just true, like,
Yeah.
probably to the
That's
base
facts.
level. Yeah. So
Yeah. That
there's a
is a
fact there
law,
that we
isn't
can't
it?
really,
Yeah.
there's a fact that we can't really dispute. But in terms of how you live your life, for example, that's you can, that's like changing your reality.
And you can do it at any given moment, which I actually think is
Exactly.
a line from Vanilla Sky to round it off nicely.
Oh
You can
yeah.
change some ways. Oh, you can change your life at any given moment, or something.
Oh
It was
yeah.
something like that.
Penelope Cruz. Yeah, she said it. She said it to him. She said it to Tom Cruise's character at one
Yeah.
point, right?
Yeah.
She said, "Yeah, I
David
can't remember the scene
Ames.
now." David Ames. Yeah, can't remember the scene,
It's a
but
chance for us to turn it around. Like it's when they meet and they're in her apartment. She's like, every moment is a
oh yeah,
chance
that
for
was
you
it.
to turn it around, or something like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. And then yeah, and she goes to him, "When did that happen to you?" And he was like, "About 5 minutes ago."
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
that's
good
it. Yeah,
bit.
exactly. Yeah, that's true. That's it. And yeah, it kind of ties in with that as well, because what did he
Yeah,
do in Vanilla Sky? He was trying to create his own reality, right?
he was indeed.
Which wasn't conducive to a healthy mind in the end.
No, but that whole idea of being put to sleep and having dreams implemented into your brain, that's a naughty concept and a whole other conversation, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It's like,
Would you do
yeah,
it? Yeah.
would I do it? Nah, fuck it, just die, man.
Just die. Just go. Let's just see
Yeah,
what happens. I don't want to live
yeah.
on forever. Oh,
Yeah, exactly. That's an enticing proposition for a short period of time. You're like, all right, yeah,
yeah.
that would be great. Let's just see see how long I can live. And then you're just like, oh, I'm so bored now. It's
I'm
I
done.
well, think of Groundhog Day. Is
No.
is Bill
Do you know
Murray
how
is
long he
like,
was supposed to be in there? Do you know how long? I think I sadly looked it up. Do you know how long he lasted in Groundhog Day?
oh, there's something like 10,000 years, right?
Oh no, I thought it was like 47 years.
Okay, I don't know how
Oh,
they
I
were
don't
like.
know.
It's
Nuts,
not even
isn't it?
like it's. Well, it's not even like it's explicitly said in the movie. I don't even think there's
No,
any
I
way for you to be able to work it out.
think I
But
googled it.
yeah, yeah, somebody just made that number up.
I know.
It's just like, this just can't be true.
Can't do
But
Groundhog
like,
Day. That would be too
yeah.
much.
Oh well, I mean, yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting proposition, right? It's like just doing the same thing over and over again, but find like what he did. You know, you're just like
Yeah,
finding a
yeah,
different speck of the day to do something
yeah.
different. So he learned how to throw cards for like 6 months,
Play the
4 hours a day,
piano. I thought that was
play the
great.
piano, learn French, like all these different languages. Like you can, but the thing is, your interactions are always the same. Like they don't change because everybody else is the same. So
Crazy.
it's like it's interesting, but But yeah, I mean, he says a great line in it as well, which is, maybe God isn't omniscient. Maybe he's just been around long enough to know everything that's going to happen.
That's a good line, isn't
And
it?
yeah, it's such a good line, because
Yeah.
you just go, yeah. I mean, that's what experience is, right? You
Yeah.
start to get older, and you start to be like, oh yeah, I know where this is going.
Yeah.
You've
I
had
know
enough.
how this is going to play out. Yeah.
Yeah, you just have you've had enough experience. You grounded your thinking and everything in some like base principles, and you're just like, oh, okay, this is how that usually ends up working out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And although it's frustrating maybe to people that haven't had that experience, so like, how do you know? How do you know? It's like, just trust me, I've had the benefit of that experience to know that this is how it's going to pan out. But you have to go through the experience to get to where I am. So carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it'll be like, oh my God, Jude is all knowing. She knew this would happen. She's a god.
Been around
Yeah,
too
like,
long.
yeah, exactly. It's like, it's unglamorous when you find out the truth. It always is.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah,
it's always
certainly.
unglamorous. It's like, how
Got a
did you
lot of
know that? It's like,
experience.
yeah, exactly. Been through it. And then,
Been there, done that.
yeah, that's it. It's the same with training. It's always going to be the same. It's like, you want a result? All right, you got to do the unglamorous shit. Just keep hustling away at it, and it's going to come your way.
That's very good advice. Just got to keep doing it. Might be boring, but yeah.
Good one to leave it on, yeah?
Yeah.
Nice one. Thanks for joining me again today, Juju, or
You're welcome.
Jiu-Jitsu today. Thank you for Bushido. Yeah, it's like, thank you to everyone for tuning in. Really appreciate everybody listening. Our numbers are growing, and so I want to say thank you for listening, and thank you for sharing the podcast. Please continue sharing the podcast with people that you know. We want to get the word out there. If you're finding value in the conversation, send it to other people. Plus, feel free to drop us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, because that helps us to generate more listenership as well. So please subscribe to the show, leave a rating, and send it to other people. It really helps us out, and we'd love to hear from you as well. So if you've got some thoughts on what we discussed in this episode, if you want a personalized Rocky message, then we can arrange that. We can arrange that. So yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.